Welcome to the Point of Convergence podcast. I am your host, Grant Lira. Get ready to sit down, tune in, and implement. Remember, the knowledge you learn here and anywhere else in your life is only worth something to you if you use it. So get implementing after this episode and enjoy. Welcome back to the Point of Convergence podcast. Today, we are joined by the CEO of Mindful Guidance, Business Breakthroughs, and much, much more. You've seen him in Forbes, Inc., Entrepreneur, Thrive Global. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Mitch Russo. How you doing, Mitch?
Great, Grant. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely, brother. You know it's a pleasure. Right on. So, Mitch, I want to get right into everything here, brother. Tell me a little bit about what's going on in your world, in your business world right now. What's happening?
Well, you know, it's interesting that you ask because when you say what's going on right now, in my life, I'm a starter. I love to start things. I love to build things. And I like to create value, and I like to help others on their journey as well. So the short story is what's new right now is I just released a new SaaS platform for coaches. Now, I have tried to use every other SaaS platform I could find to manage my very active coaching business. And the fact of the matter is that I could find nothing that I found easy to use, inexpensive, or sufficient for my needs. Most of these other products have been very complicated. I mean, I'm basically an electrical engineer. I've been in the internet computer world for well over 30 years, and I couldn't make use of these things without spending hours and hours on videos. So finally, I decided, it was about a year and a half ago, I said, you know what? I'm sick of all this. I'm building my own. And I pulled together my team, which have always been there. And I said, this is what I want to do. Here's a spec. Here's a wireframe. Let's do it. And it took a while, and it's been a journey, no doubt, but we're done. It's ready. It's rocking. It's rolling, and it's unbelievable.
So with myself being in sales, I've seen a lot of CRMs. Our company has gone through a few of them. With that being said, you did show me a demo on a call we had before this, where you kind of walked me through anything, and it was simple. Right. Not only was it simple, but it had like what you needed on there. It was very, very efficient. And from what I understood it. Like, I didn't feel like I need much more learning. Obviously I need some reps with it, but it was all there. So within that process of like actually building that CRM, right, taking that from your head to making the process, how did you go about determining what features you wanted to include, what you didn't, to that way make it as intuitive and as easy to learn as possible?
Sure. Well, and again, what I'm about to share is the process I would normally go through either with clients or on my own. And so here's the way it starts. First of all, this is not a CRM, it's a client management system. So what that means is that if you are a coach, and this is now describing my manual process, before a session, I would have to dig through all my old emails and find the email I sent to my client last week and reread that to make sure I'm up to speed. Then I would open up my word processor, my spreadsheet. I would open up 2 or 3 browser windows, one for Zoom, one for my calendar. I'd open up more tools that I have that I use, like mind mapping software, et cetera. And yes, we still need to do with mind mapping, we still need to open that up. But here's the interesting thing that I couldn't do. I could not pull, after a session is over, I would like to just say, hey, great, see you next week, and move on to the next session, but I couldn't. It took me a half an hour to copy and paste everything from all these other programs into that email that I sent to my client every single week. And here's the problem. Now I don't have any record of it other than that email. All those other screens, even though they've been saved, are scattered all over different applications. I wanted something that was so simple it could all operate from a single browser window, takes 10 minutes to learn, and cost under $20 a month for unlimited clients. That doesn't exist. That's what I built.
Doesn't exist anymore. Now it exists.
That's right. Now it does.
And why don't you name drop it? Give us the name where we can find this, because I know a lot of people who could definitely benefit from this. So where do we find that?
Sure. Well, you know, I'll just mention that I was trying to be kind of cool like you guys. And so I named it with a .io extension. So instead of having it be something.com, it's called Clientfolio, clientfol.io. So, hey, Grant, am I being cool here or what?
I like it. I like it.
So yeah. So basically Clientfolio is a SaaS application. You get 14 days to try it out for $1. And after that, if you don't like it, cancel. If you love it, do nothing and we'll keep billing you, or save $40, save 2 months, get 2 months free and sign up for the 1-year plan. So what I'm really trying to do here is I'm trying to help coaches who are sick and tired of wasting time efficiently manage their sessions and have a full vision of everything that happened before. Now, I'm going to share something with you. I don't know if other coaching software companies do this, but you see, I have a kind of a proprietary methodology, although it's not that secret. I mean, it's my way of doing things. So one of the things that I do with all my clients is I go through a goal setting process with every client. So we set goals and then we track them every session. And the goal for me, of course, was to make sure that when I'm tracking these goals, that I can see visually exactly what's going on. The second thing I do is I set up accountability questions for all my clients as well. And those accountability questions are designed to obviously keep my clients accountable. And so what I'm looking to do is every session, I'm looking to record a short 1 or 2 sentence answer to the questions that I'm asking. And the reason I want to do this is so I know what direction to go in that section. Then I check their stats or their goals. I say, okay, looks like sales were off this week. Let's talk about that. And then at the end of the entire session, I'm sending them their homework, which is a client report. And that client report looks professional. It looks as if it was produced by an organization that cares a lot about their clients. Now, Grant, I don't know, is this a video as well as audio that we're recording?
This is a video, but we are going to be primarily pushing this to podcasts. Are you thinking about screen sharing?
Yeah, I was going to screen share, but that's okay. We don't have to.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't convert the best.
No, it's not a problem. If people go to clientfol.io, they'll actually be able to see everything we're talking about today. And if they want, sign up for the trial as well.
Yeah. And of course, we're going to throw that link down below. So you guys check it out, because I had the opportunity to check it out and it was really cool. And it's easy. I won't name drop any softwares, but we use probably 4 to 6 CRMs throughout the lifespan of the company, and they're confusing. There's a lot of different stuff going on. Now, if you use them right, yeah, they can be good, but this is one where the thing that I like the most about it was the fact that you have notes on the person, right? You can bring those notes in. You can have like the visual progress of whether that's a coaching business, whether that's a client that you're working with, to see just kind of where they're at, to see if what you're doing is working from like a marketing company perspective. It's cool. And I like that too, because I'm a visual learner, right? I like to see that stuff. And if I just look at a bunch of numbers, that's not really going to resonate too well with me, but we got the visual stuff to help me out with that. So, I mean, it's awesome. And now, within that too, you guys are rolling this out. Now, this is tailored to more coaching space, right? You have that report. Is there other ways that you can kind of get this into, like, let's say, sales roles where you can get this into other industries? Or are you planning on doing that? Or is that kind of too far in the future?
Well, right now in the software, when you set it up, you get to name so for example, if you want to call the people, yourself and the people in your organization, coaches, then you just change. We have a terminology section. So you could change coaches to partners. You could change coaches to consultants. You could change coaches to students or mastermind members. And of course, again, everything is customizable, because the theory behind what we've done, the processes that we've created, are really in place for many different types of organizations. The system is designed primarily for one-to-one interaction. I'm your coach, you're my client, I'm coaching you, and I'm now recording everything we're doing, and it's all on screen. However, if I'm coaching a team or a group, The software will accommodate that and allow you to send that homework/client report to everybody on the team just by typing in their email addresses. So it's pretty flexible.
Yeah, no, and that's cool. Side note, Mitch, did you and me plan to wear gray button-ups today?
We did, and I think we did a great job. And was glad. Thank you for alerting me to the color of the day. So that was cool.
Rock and roll. Now, that's awesome. I really like talking about that. I'm curious as well as to how you got into this space, because that's an interest. SaaS is a really cool area to be in. I believe that's a future for a lot of companies, and just watch the market, watch SaaS companies are growing like incredibly fast. How did you get into that field?
Well, we'd have to go back a long time. You see, I started a software company back in 1985. So that's probably before you were born. And that company was selling a product which was then called packaged software, which meant we put our code on floppy disks and we shrink wrap it inside of a manual or in a box with the manual. And we distributed that to stores, retail stores, and shipped that box to clients who purchased our software. So that was the start of my software career. And I started with $5,000. And my partner and I both put $5,000 into a bank account and started North Edge Software Corporation many, many, many years ago. And over the course of 9 years, which was quite a bumpy journey, a journey of learning and discovering, because I had never done it before. I'd never been a CEO, never had a company with more than an employee or two. We grew that to 100+ employees and over 8 figures in revenue and sold the company. Now, all this happened from the time I started that company to the time I sold it, it was about 11 years. Now, it sounds like a long time, and in internet dog years, that's a lifetime. But on the other hand, we didn't have or need or want venture capital. We didn't have, need, or want investors. All we needed was a credit line from a bank. And so one of the first things I did is I established a banking relationship in our local Beverly, Massachusetts town. And that first relationship yielded a credit line of $2,500. And we used that money to buy a copy machine. That was our first capital asset. And then from there, over the years, once the bankers understood our business better, that credit line was raised to $1 million. And it was gradual and it was over the years, but that credit line, that bank supported us up and down throughout our entire journey. And to this day, those folks hold a warm place in my heart for supporting us all throughout that period. And there were times when they could have yanked that credit line anytime they wanted, but they chose to stay with us. And because we learned how to manage the relationship with our bankers.
Now, this is awesome. I love talking about this because I've heard it a few times, but we've never talked about it on the show, right? So line of credit, establishing that good line of credit, establishing that good relationship. How important is that when you're starting your business? I want you to talk about that.
Well, look, I mean, I later went on to run a venture-backed company as CEO and president, and they handed us $8 million basically. And so we didn't need a line of credit at that point. But they'd come into our quarterly board meetings and they'd pound on the table, you're not spending fast enough, spend more, which was completely against the way my instincts were to manage and grow a company. I said, well, look, I built my first company with zero debt, and I'd never needed debt, but it was great to have it when it was available. You're telling me just keep spending, but we don't have the revenue to support the spending. They said, we don't care. That's why we gave you the money. Spend, spend, spend. So that's what we did. And the difference was, of course, is that we were building an empty shell. We created a company that ate far more dollars per month than we were able to feed it through our natural usage or natural sales cycles. And again, that's what they wanted because their goal was to take it public. And that was the goal from the beginning. I understood it. It was a little bit different than the way I would normally do things. On the other hand, it's a more sophisticated way of growing your company with VC. Here's the downside. on a good day, if that company would have gone public, and let's say it would have gone public and raised $50 million at that time, that was a lot on the stock exchange, my ownership was about 6%. That's great. 6% of $50 million is, it's certainly nothing to sneeze at, but, it's not a significant percentage of equity. When I sold my company, I had 50% of the equity. And yes, it didn't sell for 50 million, but it sold for enough to make me pretty much set for life at the age of 44. And, you got to do things the way that you are wired to do them. I'm sure like you, us kids were raised in a family where we needed to be careful with money. And my dad had a philosophy is you never buy anything until you've saved up enough to do it. And ultimately, that's how we ran Timeslips Corporation. Later, as the company expanded and expanded, we had these things, upgrade cycles. Every year or so, we'd release a new version of the software. We'd send out the upgrade notice to everybody in the world, and then millions of dollars would pour in through the US mail, all checks and credit cards filled out on a form. And we had a room filled with fax machines so people could fax in their order. And I used to take my lunch in the fax room. I'd prop up a little table and eat my lunch watching all the fax machines printing money coming into the company. It was so much fun. But so the whole idea here is that you have to decide what is right for you, and you have to choose the method by which you want to run a company.
So when you sold that first company, you were pretty much set for life or close to it, but you already said you're a starter. Have you always been like that? Is that just your personality type where you can't sit still? You need to be doing something? No,
Grant, I retired at the age of 44, and it was wonderful. It lasted 5 weeks. It was great until I felt like I would have to pull the hair out of my head because I had nothing left to do. I said, oh yeah, I got all these projects I'm going to take care of. And those took like a week. and then from there. So what I decided at that point was that I was going to offer my services as a startup CEO to venture capital firms who had companies that needed my type of help. And to my shock and surprise, I sent out a resume and arranged some phone calls, 5, 6, 7 different VC companies in the Boston area, which is where I lived at the time. And I got 0 response, 0. Then I started calling some of these VC firms and say, hey, I'm following up. And I got crickets, nothing. Finally, 4th, 5th, 6th phone call, I get a guy. I said, hey, I sent in a resume. I'm a little surprised. I figured you'd be jumping all over that. I just did what you're trying to get all your companies to do here. Don't you want my help? Wouldn't you like me to step in, be a consultant or a coach or run them or whatever? And they said, Mitch, I got to tell you the truth. You're too old. I said, what do you mean? I'm 44 years old. He goes, yeah, most of our CEOs are in their 20s. Sorry, man, you're kind of gray hair here. We don't really need you. I said, okay, that's fine. So I decided to start my own VC firm. And I built Assist Ventures at the time based on my own money. And I started bringing in, people who wanted to invest in my little VC firm, which we did. And then eventually VC firms started coming to me and saying, look, we have these problem companies. Will you help us with these? And that's how I created a business plan for a furniture company. And they insisted that I come on board as their president and CEO. And the only way I told them I would do that is if they matched my ridiculous demands for money. And they did. So I went on board as CEO and president, and that's where I raised $8 million for that little company. But here's the thing, and this is consistent throughout my career. I love to start things. I learned the hard way that ready, fire, aim is not the best way to do it. Now I'm back to ready, aim, fire, which means that I'm doing some market research and pre-selling before I either invest $1 or write a single line of code. And that's been my pattern, certainly for the last several years. And it doesn't mean it always works. I started another SaaS company 5 years ago, and it was a complete flop. And it was based on some assumptions and some research that I felt was viable, but it wasn't. So you learn, I understood later that human nature is not where it's not consistent from person to person. A lot of us think, well, I would like that, so I'll build it. But really, other people may not. And therefore you need to do the research.
That's super interesting. And one of my favorite quotes ever is, forget exactly who said it, but if I had 4 hours to cut down a tree, I take the first three to sharpen the axe, right? So
Right.
making sure you're setting up yourself. I've never heard someone say it like that, the ready, fire, aim versus ready, aim, fire. But that's so true. And I feel like a lot of people, especially starting up, they just want to go. And
Yep.
that can be helpful in some situations, but you're gonna have to fix that down the road, right? So setting everything up, doing it right the first time is important. And I have another topic I want to get to, but I want to circle back around to something else because I want to do this justice. How did you go about establishing that good line of credit with the bank? If somebody was in a position where they knew nothing about banking, right? And they're just like, I'm starting this business, I need money. How do you build a relationship with the bank? I feel like a lot of people could benefit from that.
Yes, but you need to understand upfront that if you're in a hurry for money, then this is not the best way to go. Okay, so what I mean by that is if you have a strategy to build a relationship with a bank, it's going to take you a little while to do it, but it's strong, it's durable, but it requires maintenance. So here's an example. My partner and I went to the Beverly National Bank, found out who the vice president is, not the tellers, not the local, the kids in the office, but the real vice president of the bank. We sat down and I said, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm a resident here of the area. I'm in Hamilton, Massachusetts, and we are establishing a company here in a neighboring town, Essex, and we'd like to create a banking relationship with the company, with Beverly National Bank. And they said, sure, tell us a little bit about the business. And we were in what you might call a we were in the software business, And so at that point, we started describing what we planned on doing. We described what the business was. And they said, well, we'd like to open up a line of credit for, enough to buy a copy machine. That's what we wanted. So I said, well, yeah, we can give you, how about $2,500? I said, great. So now here's the trick that I used when I established my personal line of credit in my early 20s. I went into the bank and I borrowed $250 from the bank and I paid it all back on time. Not early, not late, on time. What I'm establishing is a record of payment reliability. If you pay it back early, they know, he just took it out and put it back. It's not really establishing anything. Then I went out and said, okay, if I borrow $250, now I'm going to borrow $500. And I did the same thing again. Again, it takes a while. But at that time, I now had a credit rating and I had a banking relationship as a young man. Later in life, when we were starting time slips, we borrowed the $2,500. We paid it back in a reasonable period of time. We established that we were going to pay it back relatively quickly. And then at that point, the banker came to us and said, hey, if you need more, you let us know. And we, of course, thanked him and we went on our way. And then later we came back and said, okay, we'd like to increase the size of the credit line, maybe to $10,000. And he said, gladly. Now, here's the thing that happened as the credit line started to grow. What we started to do proactively is call our vice president at the bank and say, we've just finished up our quarterly financials. Would it be okay if we come in and show them to you? So this guy probably never hears this from his other clients. And he said, oh, of course, come on in. So we sat down and we walk him through the financials. Now, this is the key. The key is not to make it such a positive, rosy thing. It just needs to be the truth. So he said, well, yeah, we had some collections issues here. We had some slow payments here, but we had a nice spike in orders here because we think that we're on target for our plan. And, everything appears to be going exactly as we had hoped. If you have any questions, let us know. And usually he says, no, this is great. Thanks for bringing it in, showing me. Eventually, later, as the company grew, as we brought in a fractional CFO, that's a chief financial officer, uh, now we would go to the bank with this, big shot CFO dude, and he'd come in and he'd go through all the numbers again with the banking management team. Now, of course, our credit line was up to like $250,000. And we did the same behavior every single time. We would establish in advance that we would want to review our quarterly financials. The other thing that we would do is when we had company presentations, like let's say a big client was coming in, we would invite our bankers in to see the presentation. Now, what does this do? It gives the banking people or the team at the bank enormous confidence in who we are, what we're doing, and how we're doing it, you see. So this is kind of a cool idea, is just you just always keep your bank involved. Now, I'll tell you about the time when we tested this relationship. When software is released, what's critical about releasing software to the public or to any group that are your clients is it has to be operational. Well, as we know, software has bugs, right? So we had, excuse me, we had difficulty with a particular release, and it was completely full of bugs, and we were struggling with quality, and we decided to delay the release, to be honest. And the reason was we're delaying it is because we would never want to release software that's going to harm our clients. Now, we had one more wrinkle here. Our clients are all lawyers. So here's a tip. Don't piss off your clients if they're lawyers. 1, 2, never mess with their money. And we were a billing software company. So what we ended up doing is calling the bank and saying, look, we know we're at our limit for our credit line, but we're having delays releasing our software because we don't want to release a product that will cause problems with our customers. So what are we demonstrating? We're demonstrating integrity. We're demonstrating that we care about the business, not just about the money. And what this, of course, the guy said to me at the time, I'm talking to his directly to him on the phone. I said, I know you're entitled at any point to bring this credit line down to 0. And now would not be a good time. In fact, the opposite. And he said to me, look, Mitch, you've proven that you are a reliable guy, that you are smart, that you are a clever operator. You know what you're doing. We're going to increase your credit line to get you through this. How much do you need? And that was all it took to bump that credit line up another $250,000. And then, of course, after the income came from when we finally did release the upgrade and all this money came pouring in, the first thing we did was pay down the credit line back to 0, which the bank loved to see. But don't forget, they made a lot of money on that credit line too. Back then, interest rates aren't what they are now. Back then, interest rates were between 9 and 12%. So they were a booking good bank at the time. I mean, they were making lots and lots of money from our credit line. I was happy, they were happy, and that's how the relationship continued.
That is so awesome. That is awesome, because I feel like a lot of people are going to be able to start that relationship now that would not have known how to do it before. And like listening to that and implementing it, first of all, we used to work with exclusively lawyers. Actually, I'm not sure if I told you that, but something we used to do. But within that too, building the relationships, right? Showing you're reliable, showing that they can depend on you, and really just being transparent with them within your business. I think the coolest part of that is that you guys actually invited them into your meetings. You guys would show them, your annual reports, all that stuff. I mean, how much more transparent can you get than that? That's awesome. And then they know everything, right?
Right.
For the most part, they know everything that you're showing them. That's huge. Now, within that too, something else I want to talk about, because I'm looking at the time, I want to keep this on time here. Business breakthroughs, right? Tony Robbins. Anybody who knows marketing probably knows Tony Robbins. It's a pretty big name. How did that come to be? How did you meet Tony? How did you guys start a business together?
Well, this goes back to my friendship with Chet Holmes. So Chet was trying to sell me ad space back when I was running Timeslips Corporation, and we were a big deal. I mean, if you've ever read Chet's book, he talks about the Dream 100. Well, we were one of his top dream clients. If he could land us, he would be very happy. Why? Because we were growing very rapidly. We were spending a lot of money on advertising, and he was selling advertising. So it took him a year and a half to finally get me to buy. And then when I did, and we went into his publication, our company shot right up because sales were fantastic. It was a great experience. Well, because of that, we invested even more in advertising, which generated even more growth and revenue. And Chet and I became friends. That's how we started that friendship in probably 1988. And that friendship went way beyond business. That friendship became, attending each other's family events. That friendship became meeting up sometimes anywhere in the country that we needed to go hang out together. And we would enjoy each other's company. We loved the way each other thought. And he used to tell me I'm the only normal friend he has. I never knew if that was an insult or a compliment, but that was fine. I could be normal if I have to be, I guess. But then what ended up happening is after I sold the company, nobody was happier for me than Chet. Well, of course, our friendship continued. We'd speak every week. We'd discuss philosophy. We'd discuss fate. Is fate real? And all these cool things. And then, in one of our monthly calls, he was very upset. And I said, what are you angry about? And he goes, well, I got this guy on my team. I just can't manage him. I just don't know what to do. He's such a pain in the ass. And I said, well, why? What's going on? And then he went on and told me, and I said, give me his name. I want to talk to him. He said, what do you want to talk to him for? You're not in my business. I said, just give me his name. I'd like to talk to him. So I called this guy up on the phone. I said, what's your problem? What are you doing bothering my friend Chet? And he said, well, Chet wants me to do everything. He wants me to do the hiring. He wants me to do the sales training. He wants me to do the maintenance. And I said, okay, if you could take one thing off your plate, what would that be? And he said, recruiting. I hate recruiting. And we now need more people than ever. And I just don't have the time for it. And I don't know how or why I said what I said to him. I said, fine, I'll do your recruiting. Grant, I have no idea where that came from. I figured, okay. So I called Chet back. I said, look, buddy, I got good news and I got bad news. Good news is I think he's going to be cool now. He won't bother you anymore. Bad news is that unfortunately I'm your new recruiter. He goes, what? I said, yeah, I volunteered to do it. I said, don't worry. I'll get your organization in shape. I'll figure out who should manage it and I'll turn it back over to you. It should take me about a couple of months. He goes, oh, yeah, great. I said, well, okay, quick question. I don't know how to recruit. How do I learn how to do that? He goes, oh yeah, just read chapter 5 in my book or chapter 4, how to hire sales superstars. I said, okay. So I read it. Of course, it's not really a blueprint. It's basically a philosophy. And I said, okay, well, and I went back to this guy. I said, hey, since I'm going to be doing your recruiting, how about training me on how to do it? He goes, yeah, here's a couple of recordings of my calls, of which they were kind of interesting to say the least. I then did what I normally do with the type of engineering mind that I have is I systematized the entire process. I used software and automation to create a systematized system by which you can conduct recruiting sessions and then progress them through the training and everything else needed to get them on board. Once I built that system, it took me about a month to do. We then started recruiting, and we were recruiting throughout the process manually. It was just me, really. I was doing the recruiting. And then eventually, at that point, we started using the automation and we were able to scale recruiting at a level that the company had never seen before. And inside of 6 weeks, we had tripled their sales force. And I identified one strong individual. And I said, I think you should be the manager. And I called Chet. I said, okay, buddy, we're all set. Here's your manager, tripled your sales force. You're all set to go. Hope that was helpful. He said, yeah, it was great. But where do you think you're going? I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, what am I supposed to do with this $18,000 check on my desk? I said, well, what are you talking about? We're friends. I'm not asking you for money. He goes, no, I understand. I'm not going to pay you a penny. This is the money you earned. These are the people you hired. This is your commission on their sales. I said, really? He goes, yep. I said, oh, okay, I guess you could send it along. And he goes, well, you got to keep going. I said, well, all right. I've automated it. It's pretty easy in my mind. So I just did that. Eventually, that became me becoming part of his organization. And I started at the bottom. I started as the recruiter. 3 months later, he asked if I would be interested in running the organization. I said, yeah, I guess so. I got to know everybody. I like people. Then finally, at that point, after running and being appointed CEO, president rather, not CEO, he was CEO. At that point, he said, "Look, I've been trying to arrange this conversation with Tony Robbins now for 17 years." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm persistent. You read in my book, I have pig-headed discipline. Well, that's what we've done. I've persisted for 17 years. I finally got a meeting with Tony. I'm flying out to see him." I said, "Great." So he flies out, comes back. He says, "Okay, we're going to meet next Thursday night, you, me, and Tony." Now, you got to understand, I only know Tony Robbins from the tapes of his voice that I've listened to him. His programs were amazing. I leaned on his virtual advice through listening to his programs for many years. And so finally on Thursday night, we get on the phone with Tony Robbins, and Chet introduces me as the CEO, president of his company. And next thing you know, we're planning on how to build this business together. And it took quite a lot. It turns out that we met every Thursday night on and off. There were certain nights he couldn't, for almost 6 months. And we discussed every possible angle of how to do this until eventually we all agreed. And none of us really loved the idea. There was things about it he didn't like, things about it we didn't like. But the bottom line is we said, let's just do this. And then 7 weeks later, we had just 7 weeks to plan a full event in Las Vegas and fill that room with over 500 people. And we did it. And now we ended up on stage. I finally met Tony Robbins, shook his hand face to face, welcome aboard. It was great. And we built this company from there. And from that event, we recorded about 50 hours of content. And then we used that content to build courses over the following year. And that's what we sold. That's how the whole business really took off.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That is such a cool story. So you basically, I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes and wonder, in that call, why you agreed to do that. But obviously it was for a reason. Call it fate, whatever it was, you agreed. And now, look what happened because of it. That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the thing, that's why it pays to listen to what cannot be heard. And the only way to do that is by being quiet. So how do you be quiet? You be quiet by just making sure that you're not cluttering your mind with noise and with fear and with doubt. So when you get an impulse and you think about it and it feels right, go further, explore it deeper, see what that leads to. At that moment in time when I said yes to recruiting, I felt like that was the right thing to do. My goal was to relieve Chet of these issues because I care about him. He's my friend. But ultimately what ended up happening was that became the on-ramp to a much, much bigger opportunity for me.
That's awesome. I love those opportunity stories where it doesn't make sense necessarily in the beginning, and then you see how things develop, because that's so much of how businesses are when they're first starting out, right? There's a lot of things that you can do, and almost listening to that cosmic voice when you hear yeah, I should do this, and you truly believe that, you need to do it. You have to, because think about if you didn't, you never would have started that business with Tony Robbins. That's something really cool that you can say you've done. That is awesome. Now, see, we're coming up on time here, Mitch. Where can we reach out? I'm already going to throw the link to the CRM down below. Where can we get a hold of you? Where can we find more information on you? Drop whatever you want, brother.
Sure. So the coaching software is called Clientfolio. It's FOL.io. And certainly you can get take $1 and sign up for 14 days. But if you want to learn more about me in general, you can go to MitchRusso.com. Now, I do have a gift for your listeners. If you're interested, would you like me to provide that?
I think we're all interested. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So I have basically compiled a short report on the top 3 strategies I have used to grow every single company I have ever been involved with. And you could get that for free at profitstackingsecrets.com. And basically, it's a free download. Yes, there's an upsell, of course, but you don't have to take the upsell if you don't want it. If you do, you'll end up with something awesome. But the bottom line is go get the free report. And if you're a coach in particular, that free report will be very relevant to your work. It's relevant to all businesses, but in particular to coaches.
That's outstanding. So there we go. Mitch Russo providing some more value for us at the end of the call, a ton provided throughout the call. Guys, this is one of those episodes where you need to start implementing some of this stuff, whether it's actual advice we get from the amazing gift, whether it's advice we get from the line of credit, whether it's just advice about how scaling your business. Like, implement this stuff, because it's no good if it just stays in your head and you don't do anything with it. So Mitch, once again, brother, thank you for your time today. I know that our listeners are going to get a ton out of this.
My pleasure, Grant. Thank you for the opportunity to share my message. And I hope everybody listening has enjoyed what we've talked about today. And I'll invite your listeners, if you have a question, reach out. You can go to mitchrusso.com. There's a contact us form there. And if you have a question, I get everything that goes to the site comes through my assistant, and she directs it to me if it's a question, and I'm happy to answer it.
There we go. There you go, guys. Take advantage of that, because that's a huge offer right there. Mitch, thank you so much, brother.
My pleasure, Grant.